So we're in the home stretch of our year of Brahma Vihara practice. We're in the home stretch with the practice of karuna, of compassion. And I hope that for all of us, the practice doesn't end with our focus on the topic as we move afterwards next month into mudita, sympathetic joy. I find that the practice of karuna, the practice of opening the heart in the face of my own hardship and struggle, or in the face of another's, presents edges and challenges. I don't know that that will ever end. These are practices to carry together with us in our hearts and in our minds throughout our lives, as are all these practices, obviously. So I want to share a bit more today on some of the challenges that arise in the practice of karuna, and some ways that we can work with these edges, with these challenges, both on and off the cushion, right? In our formal practice and in our lives. I remember sometimes when I hear teachings from teachers or I read from teachers in a book, some particular phrase or way that something is explained or something is said, and it just blows my mind, wide open, allowing me to connect much more deeply with a particular teaching or another way in to a practice that makes me feel so much more connected to how this practice can help me and support me. I remember in particular when I was learning about the hindrances, right? The universal mind and body states that we all encounter in our practices. Sensual desire, aversion, tiredness or heaviness, restlessness and irritability, the doubting mind. And a teacher suggesting that we don't just see these as hindrances, but that we practice in seeing these as opportunities. That every single hindrance that arises is an opportunity for practice. It's an opportunity for meeting ourselves right at the edge in that moment of where we are. And it forever changed my relationship with the experience of hindrances. Now, of course, I forget to take advantage of those opportunities. But when I remember that, oh, here's a hindrance, I can also remember here's an opportunity. I have this imagery, this analogy that I often use in my own thinking about this practice of compassion, really all the Brahma Viharas. So for those of you that have skied, you might particularly appreciate this analogy. When we first learn how to ski, there's this intuitive reactivity that we have to figure out how to decondition and recondition ourselves, something very counterintuitive that we have to work with. So we're typically on a flat surface. And when we lose our balance, we will reflexively lean backwards as a way of regaining our balance. But when we're skiing down the slope, when we're skiing down the mountain, this surface that we're on is not flat. And if we feel like we're losing our balance and we do the reflexive thing of going backwards, then of course we fall. And what we need to do is this very counterintuitive response in the moment. When I feel like I'm losing my balance, I actually need to lean right forward into that feeling of losing my balance. And then I maintain my balance. You know, even the ski boots are naturally bent forward. When you're wearing a ski boot, you can't stand fully upright. It's bent forward to help us with this practice that when you're going this way, leaning forward is straight. Eventually, you get back up on the mountain, you fall a few more times, and your body starts getting it, right? Like when I'm going down, I gotta lean forward. I recently heard this beautiful talk on compassion by meditation teacher Jill Shepherd. And she gave me another one of those blowing my mind moments with this beautiful, simple phrase. She was talking about the practice of compassion. and the challenges that we invariably encounter within ourselves. And she just said, well, if it's in the way, it is the way. If it's in the way, it is the way. Yeah. That was really helpful for me. So it's the way of what? What is it the way of? What is it that if I see this moment for what it is, what is it teaching me? What is it that I'm seeing into? I very much appreciate the maps and the lists that Buddha, I would say, created, but he just noted what is essentially already always been here. The map of greed, hatred, and delusion, right? How our non-skillful reactivity and our habituated and conditioned responses are almost inevitably the manifestations of our own desire, of our own aversion, and our ignorance, our deluded thinking. So can I see my conditioned reactivity just for what it is? Right here, as I'm having this reactivity, can I see that this is arising from a desire or from an aversion? And then the other map is that of dukkha and anicca and anatta, right? The ordinary, everyday lived experience of dissatisfactoriness, of discontentment, great suffering, and also everyday ordinary sufferings, moment to moment, that we experience in our lives. And also the inherent nature that everything is impermanent. And the insight, the awareness of not self or non-self. So that as I'm in this hindrance experience, as I'm in this reactive experience, I might be able to appreciate that this isn't mine and me, and this isn't fixed and permanent and lasting. That everything ultimately is impermanent and impersonal. Dukkha, in particular, has a direct relationship with this practice of karuna, of compassion. As we open our hearts towards, as we lean forward towards the suffering and the hardships that we're encountering within ourselves or with another, that we see another's hardship and pain and suffering, we're releasing dukkha. We're bringing the end of dukkha. And Buddha taught this is ultimately the goal of everything that he taught. Everything is about the end, the release and the end of dukkha. So in difficult and reactive moments, it isn't only metta itself, it isn't only this kind, friendly posture that's needed, but in the face of hardship and pain and loss and sorrow and difficulty, I need the practice of compassion to lean in, to lean forward. Flat is now looking this way. It's not looking this way. And to be in balance with this experience, how do I open myself to be with? As many of my fellow teachers have so beautifully been sharing, compassion is always needed to be balanced with wisdom. So what does this moment call for? Is it the soft front, the tender opening of the heart of compassion? Is it standing firm in the straight back, the strong back of compassion, being able to recognize and discern this moment? This moment needs me to create some distance. I need to take a break. I need to step away from this. So wisdom and compassion always in balance with each other. Now I want to share with you a couple of other practices that are what I call leaning in practices that can be supportive in this practice of opening ourselves. Ajahn Brahm shares this great story that he was once on retreat with his teacher Ajahn Chah. And the nearby village had some sort of festival. And they were playing loud music over the loudspeakers. Ajahn Chah saw that Ajahn Brahm and his fellow meditation practitioners are experiencing disturbance from all the noise. So Ajahn Chah says to them, "It is not the noise that disturbs you. It is you who disturbs the noise." And when I heard that story, I was like, whoa, this is not just about hearing noise, right? This is about all the inner noise that disturbs me too. What's it like to stay present with the awareness, the non-judging, attentive awareness of there's noise, there's pain, there's difficulty, there's roiling, there's inner turmoil happening for all sorts of reasons. And what's the difference between the existence of that noise, of that difficulty, and me disturbing that noise, me getting in my own way, essentially? I know that for myself, this is not something that's always available for me right then and there in that moment. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I can just be present right there and say, what's the noise? And then what's me disturbing the noise? Another beautiful practice that can be supportive is just taking a mindful pause. And as strange as it may seem, this may also be in our own formal practice where all we're doing is taking a pause, right? We're just sitting in practice. But even then, just taking an intentional pause, taking an intentional breath in and out, and then allowing ourselves to come to stillness, even just for a few moments, in order to allow ourselves to ground and to settle and to come into presence. You know, we all know from our experiences in practice that we may be sitting in formal practice, but we're not always sitting in presence during that time. And certainly outside of formal practice in our daily lives. So just dropping in, just for a few short moments, intentionally taking that breath in and out, just bringing ourselves to presence. Then one more practice, Tara Brach talks about this a lot. Beautiful practice, the practice of saying yes. Becoming aware of a difficulty, of a hardship, of a challenge that we're experiencing, and turning inwardly, either silently within our mind or actually using our mouth and saying yes, 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 or some variation of that. I see you. I see you. Or I consent. I give you permission to be. A phrase that I use often in this sort of practice is, you're here. You're here. Just an acknowledgement and a discernment between me and the noise, and a way of relating differently with the sorrow, with the challenge, with the reactivity. So as we go into practice today and then throughout the rest of our day, what's it like to lean in? What does leaning forward look like? What's being asked for? What's being called for? What would be supportive? What's the difference between the noise disturbing me and me disturbing the noise? Yeah, thank you for your kind attention.